Hello, everybody, and welcome to Penguin TV. This is the fourth episode, and it is on Elephant Oath. Um, so, I built this deck a couple of months ago, once we got Masters Edition 4. I took a look at some vintage lists, and I dabbled here and there. I played Oath of Druids a ton of times. I think I played it in probably about 50 classic events since Oath of Druids was released in Exodus. Maybe a little less, maybe like 40. And I've done pretty well with it. A lot of people know me as the Oath guy. But here is the newest version of it that I would run in events. I'm actually hoping to run it into one of the two events that are going to fire or possibly fire while I'm home this weekend. There's one in about 2 hours, and then there's one tomorrow evening, which I should be able to get home from work with in time to join. But anyway, this is Oath of Druids. It is a blue combo control deck. The combo is Oath of Druids. Sometimes it's a one-card combo. Other times you need to facilitate it with Forbidden Orchard. But basically what Oath of Druids does is it says that if my opponent has more creatures than me, or I have more creatures than my opponent, then during each of our respective upkeeps, we can mill cards from the top of our deck until we hit a creature and slam it into play. Forbidden Orchard will give them a creature if they refuse to play by our game. And on top of that, it's a rainbow land, which is pretty nice because we are running 4 colors in this build, and every single card is hard castable. To supplement the Oath of Druids, because we're running 3 and then a 4th in the sideboard, we are playing a Show and Tell. This is a good way to get around hate aimed at Oath of Druids in particular, such as Qasali Pridemage, Trigon Predator, Chalice of the Void on 2, Leyline of Sanctity. So this card helps get you around all of those. And the things you're going to be flipping up are Emrakul the Aeon's Torn, and 2 copies of Terastodon. This deck is best against workshop builds because you've got 2 board sweepers that you can come up into, and then a third that often acts as a board sweeper. The other really, based off of last week's event and what placed and what played, Fish is pretty popular, and Terastodons don't really do a whole lot against Fish. Emrakul does, at least in game 1. But what Terastodon can do is blow up our Oath in our own lands and give us an attacking force. But we're gonna bring in a sideboard guy for our Fish matches. Our other win condition, as well as Oath of Druids, is Voltaic Key and Time Vault, followed up by Tezzeret the Seeker and Jace the Mind Sculptor. So your A game is to get Oath of Druids, and because of the way Oath of Druids works, we can't reliably cast or expect to cast any other card in our deck after we've resolved Oath, because it may be in our graveyard. And we're not running any regrowths or Gaia's Blessings, Krosan Reclamations, anything to target our graveyard. We are just pure combo control here. So if we get a Time Vault down, though, we win the game, because everyone who gets a Time Vault down wins the game. But what we're going to be looking to get into is either Planeswalkers or just Oath of Druids and Forbidden Orchard, and then kill them that way. In order to find all of these kill conditions, we've got an Imperial Seal, a Vampiric Tutor, a Demonic Tutor, an Enlightened Tutor, since half of our win conditions are artifacts or enchantments, and then a Mystical Tutor, which is more for our toolbox of disruption than it is for finding Show and Tell. But Mystical Tutor can find Show and Tell, and it can find one of these other 4 tutors to find Time Vault, Voltaic Key, or Oath of Druids. One thing you may notice is that there is no Tinker in this deck because there is no robot to fetch. I don't like Blightsteel Colossus in Elephant style Oath. I feel like adding the Terastodons and a Blightsteel is counterproductive, because Blightsteel, while winning the game, isn't what this version of the build is trying to set up. This is a much more controlling build than the good game versions. So to help us get everywhere that we need to be, we've got 2 Mana Drain, and we've got 2 Steel Sabotage, which really only work against the shop decks. I mean, you can sometimes hit a lucky Vault Key, either or, but this is for workshops. And then we've got the obligatory 4 Force of Will. You don't see any Spell Pierces. I decided to cut the Spell Pierces for Mana Drains. Steel Sabotage works the way we want it to, like a Spell Pierce against workshop decks, but even better since it's a hard counter. And Spell Pierce doesn't really do a whole heck of a lot versus the fish decks. They usually only run about 10 or so spells, and it's useless when you are on the draw, because then you can't even counter the Aether Vial. At least Mana Drain will let you counter bears, and it will let you counter their Force of Wills. Mana Drain also, if you can resolve it against shops, will help you ramp up into one of your walkers. We've got 4 Brainstorms and a Sensei's Divining Top to help us filter, because why wouldn't we? This is one of the most powerful cards in the format when you're playing fetch lands, and Sensei's Divining Top, a lot of the times I find myself tutoring for Divining Top. Card selection is fantastic, especially when you've got ways to stymie your opponent or drop an auto win. And the way that we're going to stymie our opponents are 2 Nature's Claim, which are good against pretty much the field. Fish is the exception. Ancient Grudge, which is fantastic with Oath of Druids. One of the great things about Oath of Druids and Ancient Grudge is that, you know, your first creature might get duplicated, but your second creature is going to come down, and Ancient Grudge will probably be in your graveyard by then, and you can blow up their giant duplicate and swing in on the following turn. Lastly, we've got a Swords to Plowshares. This is a nod to the fish decks. They were the most popular archetype last week, and they're consistently in the events. Oath of Druids should theoretically beat them on paper, but the way that I'm set up, I feel like I want a spot removal card, and my sideboard helps address the matchup more. And on top of that, it kills Metalworker and it kills Lodestone Golem. Like, creatures are a lot more important in the metagame now, in between Lodestone Golem, Metalworker, and the fish builds with Leonin Arbiter and Phyrexian Revoker. There are a lot more creatures running around than there were before Legacy hit, or I'm sorry, Destiny hit. So in order to cast all of these things, we've got our 4 Forbidden Orchards. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fetch lands. And we have 2 tropical islands, 3 underground seas, 2 tundras, a volcanic island, and a regular old island. I'm a big fan of Wasteland in Oath decks, but one, I'm not really worried about the Oath Mirror. 2, Wastelands are counterproductive when you're running 4 colors that you want to cast their actual casting cost. We would love to cast Ancient Grudge if we draw it, and that's why there's a volcanic island. I like to be able to do what I want to do with my cards, and not sit there because I only thought to cast it off the flashback of 1 green. So that's the main deck, and our good matchups on paper are workshop decks and fish decks. Our bad matchups on paper are dredge and combo. Blue control, I think it's kind of a toss-up. Maybe a 50-50. But like LED tendrils, that is just a rough matchup for us. So in our sideboard, to help address us, we've got the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 dredge cards. I love having 7 dredge cards. And then Pithing Needle is 8 and 9 versus Bazaar of Baghdad, which I do side in, but they're more of a format card than just for dredge. So these guys all deal with dredge. And I like Yixlid Jailer with Oath of Druids when you're not playing Dragon's Breath, because now you can resolve your combo and still disrupt them, which is pretty relevant. So we've got the 2 Pithing Needles, which mostly come in against Bazaar of Baghdad, but they can come in versus shops to hit Kuldotha the Forge Master or Metalworker. They can come in against blue decks that rely heavily on Jace. And I'm sure there are many other applications that you might want to bring this in for. It's a pretty versatile card. We've got another Ancient Grudge and another Nature's Claim versus Workshop decks, bringing our total hate up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on top of our Terastodons. And then Ancient Grudge cycles twice, so we've got a theoretical 9 cards against shops post-board. 10 if you want to bring in the Swords to Plowshares. Swords to Plowshares, Perish, and Balance are all for fish. Balance is pretty much a Wrath of God. You just have to be careful because you might be getting rid of some of your lands. Balance and Perish are a big reason for the Mystical Tutor to be in the main deck. And then the extra Swords to Plowshares is just pretty decent to have in versus them too. Like you would take out an Ancient Grudge and bring in the Sword, take out 2 Nature's Claims, bring in Perish, Balance, and then probably take out a Steel Sabotage for the Progenitus, which is fallen way out of favor in Oath decks. He hasn't really been seen in Vintage in quite a while. He hasn't been seen in Classic in quite a while. But the reasons I like him is that he can't be hit by Swords to Plowshares, he can't be hit by Karakas, he can't be hit by Gilded Drake or Sower of Temptation, he can't be blocked, he can't be hit by Duplicant. This guy will win you the game if you can untap with him twice. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Someone would have to cast Balance, I'd have to cast my own Perish, or Wrath of God. You can't bounce him. He's the best answer I could find for the format as a whole. I am totally giving up my Storm matchup, though. I have to rely pretty much on 2 Mana Drains and 4 Force of Wills to beat Storm. But I think that's okay, because Workshops is doing a really good job of keeping Storm out of the metagame. So that's this deck, and hopefully the Penguin TV that follows will be an actual event and not just something I do throughout the week because the events didn't fire. I will see you guys for round 1, and I hope you enjoy.